Now, White House and Republican leaders in Congress, they remain locked in a standoff over government spending. The impasse could force a government shutdown if no agreement is in place before Friday night, midnight. My next guest is an expert on government spending. Chris Edwards is the Director of Tax Policy Studies at the Cato Institute. Chris, good to have you with us on Bloomberg. Explain a little bit about the dynamics right now in Washington. The clock seems to be ticking. Do we get a shutdown, do you believe, at midnight tomorrow?
It looks like we are going to get a government shutdown, and, you know, people might misperceive this as sort of a childish squabble in Washington. In fact, there are really important issues here at play. Last November, we had the biggest landslide election we've had in a long time, and this large group of new congressmen came to Washington determined to cut spending. The $60 billion of cuts that House Republicans initially asked for would only solve 4% of the deficit problem. So frankly, that seems to me to be a reasonable demand. So it looks like the House Republicans are really standing firm here and are going to demand really substantial cuts.
Now, earlier today, Chris, you hosted a panel discussion in Washington. Among the attendees, Senator Bob Corker, a Republican from Tennessee, and also Mike Lee from Utah, Republican. What's the tone right now among those senators?
Well, I think there's a lot of conservative senators and congressmen in Washington, frankly, who are gung-ho about really solving the problem here in Washington. We know this trillion-dollar deficits can't go on forever. Senator Corker's bill would tie spending restraints to the upcoming vote in Congress on the debt limit. Congress probably has to raise the debt limit in another month or so, and Republicans are strategizing about what permanent reforms to spending they can tie to that debt limit vote. And as you know, after that, then we start debating the fiscal 2012 budget. So there's a whole series of budget battles set up here, and that's why this battle over shutting the government that's going on this week is important, because Republicans know, if they sort of cave in on this one, then in later battles later in the year, it'll give the Democrats the upper hand.
Chris, how did we come to this impasse? Because the 111th Congress, it was controlled by the Democrats in the House and the Senate. Why are we now 6 months into the new fiscal year and we still don't have a budget? Why couldn't the Democrats have passed a budget when they were in control of both houses?
Well, they could have. In fact, the Democrats have controlled Congress for 4 years, from 2007 through to 2010. And last year, when they controlled Congress, they didn't pass a budget. They've been doing they did a whole series of short-term stopgap spending measures, which is kind of ridiculous. The first responsibility of Congress is surely to fund some of the basics in the federal government. So, that's where we are today. We're still battling over fiscal year spending, and the fiscal year is half over. I hope Republicans, hang firm on these initial spending cuts, because frankly, there is a lot more spending cuts we need to do. At Cato, we've got a whole website, downsizinggovernment.org. We go through every federal department. We find out where all the wasteful spending is. And, there's a lot of work to do. This is just the first step.
Well, if there's a lot of work to do, how much is going to get done between now and Friday midnight? Is there really going to be any substantive horse trading, or is it just going to be more politicking?
No, I don't think it is politicking. I think there's real substantive issues here. The Democrats simply don't want to cut spending at all. They really don't. For John Boehner, the Speaker of the House, he's got to deal with the fact that there's 80 or more freshman conservative members who really don't want to compromise, who really see $60 billion in spending cuts as a reasonable first step.
Right, but Chris says, but taking that at face value, why has it come down now to something like a 48-hour clock in order to get, as you just described, these big issues resolved?
I think, there is a little, to be a little cynical, there's a bit of incentive on both sides to shut down the government, at least for a while. On the Democratic side, they think Republicans will get all the blame because Republicans got most of the blame when the government shut down back in 1996. For Republicans, frankly, a shutdown of a few days or a week wouldn't be a bad thing because it would show Democrats that they're really serious and don't want to compromise. So, I think, the government will shut down for a few days, perhaps a week, and then I think that's when it'll really get down to the wire, and I think that there will be a compromise at that time.